I'm sorry, sir, but the flight is overbooked, the airline agent said, not meeting his eyes. Laz Nolan narrowed his gaze. I'm the keynote speaker at a global tech summit in New York in less than 12 hours. I don't miss flights. The agent looked panicked, tapping at her screen. We're trying to find volunteers. I'll pay double for a seat. Sir, we're not allowed to. I'll buy the entire damn row. A soft voice cut through the chaos. He can have mine. Everyone turned. She was standing just a few feet away, her suitcase at her side, a crumpled boarding pass in her hand. Her brown hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her oversized college hoodie was speckled with coffee stains. She didn't look like someone who could afford to give up a flight, not at all. But her eyes calm, steady locked with Laz's. I can take the next one, she said, shrugging like it was nothing. You don't have to do that, Laz said, frowning. I know. She handed the agent her ticket. But you look like someone who doesn't take no for an answer. And I'm not in a rush. The agent practically threw herself into the computer. Thank you, ma'am. This helps a lot. Laz watched as the woman picked up her suitcase and moved out of the line. She leaned against the wall like it really was no big deal. Wait, he called after her before she could walk away. What's your name? She looked over her shoulder. Tessa. Tessa Willis. He took a step toward her. Let me buy you dinner. Or a drink. Something. She blinked. You don't have to. You gave up your seat for a stranger. That's not nothing. She hesitated, then smiled. All right. But I picked the place. 2 hours later, they sat at a tiny diner near the airport, the kind with peeling menus and waitresses who called you Han. Tessa dunked a fry in ketchup and tilted her head at him. So, what's the big deal with this flight anyway? Hot date in New York. Laz chuckled. Business. I'm CEO of Nolan Innovations. We design high-level AI systems. Her eyes widened. Wait, you're Lazarus Nolan? He winced. Please don't say it like that. Sorry, she laughed. You're on every tech magazine ever. I read about you in my business class. You're a student? Was. Graduated last year. Business and art history? Weird combo, I know. No, it's not, he said. It's rare. I like rare. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and looked down at her plate. So, what's it like being you? He paused, caught off guard. No one ever asked him that. They asked about market shares and projections, not feelings. Lonely sometimes, he said honestly. People want things from me. Rarely just me. Tessa looked at him, really looked at him. Well, tonight you're just a guy eating fries with a girl in an airport diner. A slow, real smile spread across his face. And you? I'm just a girl who gave up her seat for a stranger. He leaned in. Best trade I've ever made. They talked until the diner emptied out, and the waitress started wiping down tables. Laz didn't want the night to end. For once, someone wasn't impressed by his wealth. She didn't care about his last name. She asked questions that made him think, and laughed at things that weren't even funny, just honest. When they stepped outside, the rain had started. Tessa pulled her jacket tighter and glanced at her phone. There's a flight out at 7 a.m. I'll try to get on that one. Laz looked at his watch. That's only 5 hours from now. You should sleep. She shrugged. I'll nap in the lounge. You're not sleeping in a plastic chair, he said, already pulling out his wallet. Come with me. My hotel has a suite. You can take the room. I'll crash on the couch. She raised an eyebrow. You expect me to believe a billionaire sleeps on couches? I'm not expecting anything, he said gently. You did something kind for me. Let me return the favor. Tessa studied him for a long beat. Okay, but if you snore, I'm out. The hotel suite was twice the size of her apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city lights, and the bed looked like it could fit 10 people. Tessa wandered to the window, her breath fogging the glass. This is crazy, she whispered. Laz handed her a fresh toothbrush from the guest drawer. It's just a room. No, she said, turning to him. It's not. He didn't know if she meant the room or this night or the way the air between them had suddenly shifted. Her eyes were soft now, but something deeper lingered their curiosity. Maybe. Or fear. "I won't do anything you're not okay with," he said, voice low. "I know." She stepped forward, brushing past him toward the bathroom. She paused at the door. "Thank you for not being a jerk." Laz smiled. "Thank you for giving up your seat." He didn't sleep. He lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering how a girl in a hoodie had managed to make him feel more in one night than women in designer dresses had in years. At 6 a.m., she came out dressed and ready, her bag in hand. "I should go," she said quietly. "My flight's boarding soon." He stood. "Tessa, I know. It was one night." She smiled. "I'm glad it happened." He stepped forward. "Can I have your number?" She hesitated. "Let's leave it here. Sometimes the best nights are the ones you don't try to recreate." "Right?" he said, swallowing the disappointment. She kissed his cheek, and then she was gone. Laz made it to New York. He gave his speech, shook hands with investors, signed a deal worth millions. But every night, he thought of a girl in a hoodie who looked at him like he was just a man. And for the first time in his life, Laz Nolan wanted to be just that, just a man, for her. 3 weeks later, Lazarus Nolan stood at the edge of the gallery floor, hands folded behind his back, expression unreadable. He wasn't supposed to be here. The invitation had come in a square white envelope, slipped discreetly into the pile of corporate mail on his desk. No return address, no note, just a small, embossed card. "Emerging artists of the East Village, one night only." He'd almost tossed it, but something about the handwriting, delicate, deliberate, had made him pause. And now here he was, wearing a tailored black suit that didn't belong in a warehouse-turned-art space filled with paint-stained jeans and vintage leather jackets. Laz scanned the room, surrounded by canvas and brushstroke and color, the kind of chaos money couldn't engineer. And then there she was. Tessa stood across the gallery in front of a large mixed-media piece, her hair loose this time, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. She wore a pale blue jumpsuit that cinched at the waist, her shoes unapologetically scuffed. She didn't see him yet. Her focus was fixed on the older woman beside her who appeared to be writing a check. He took a step forward just as she turned. Her eyes widened, but only for a moment. Then she walked toward him without hesitation, without apology. "You came," she said, stopping just short of touching him. "You didn't leave a name on the invite," Laz replied. "But I recognized the handwriting." Tessa folded her arms. "Didn't think you'd remember." "I remember everything about that night." She looked down at the polished concrete floor. "I almost didn't send it." "Why?" "Because I didn't want to be a footnote in your life. A story you tell in between flights." Laz studied her. "You think that's all you are?" "I didn't know what I was," she admitted. "But then I sold a piece last week, and instead of celebrating, I kept wondering if you ever thought about that night." "I did," he said. "Every day." Her breath caught, but she didn't look away. "So why didn't you find me?" "I didn't want to chase someone who didn't want to be found." "I didn't want to be chased," she said quietly. "I wanted to be remembered." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Not only did I remember you, I started building an entire wing in your name." She blinked. "What?" "The Nolan Foundation's expanding into youth art programs. I needed a name for it. I thought about all the people I've met in the last year, and only one made me stop running long enough to consider what I actually cared about." Tessa's lips parted, but no words came. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I'm not here to buy your art. I'm here because I couldn't stop thinking about the woman who gave up her seat like it was nothing and then walked out of my life like it hadn't changed everything." She unfolded the paper. Her expression shifted as she read, a full funding offer, a year-long residency, and a gallery showcase all under her name. Her fingers tightened on the edges. "This is real." "Yes. And it's yours. No strings." Tessa looked up. "There are always strings." "Not this time." A beat passed between them, the air thick with everything unsaid. Why me, she asked. There are 1,000 artists more qualified. Maybe, Laz said. But none of them made me question everything I thought I wanted. She looked away, then back. You know I'm not going to fall at your feet just because you fund a gallery. I don't want you to fall. I want you to stand next to me, he said. You once said the best nights are the ones you don't try to recreate. But I've spent the last 3 weeks trying to prove you wrong. Her lips curved slightly. That sounds like something a CEO would say. Then let me say something different, he said. I didn't come here to negotiate. I came to see if there's still something between us worth risking. Tessa folded the paper and tucked it into her pocket. I don't need your money, Laz. I know. I don't want to be your project. You're not. She tilted her head. Then what am I? He hesitated, not because he didn't know, but because saying it aloud felt like stepping off a ledge. You're the first person who's ever made me feel like the man behind the name matters more than the name itself, he said. You're the only thing I've wanted that I didn't try to buy. Tessa's shoulders dropped, the tension ebbing. You really remember everything? He nodded. You ordered fries and a side of pickles. You said the rain smelled different in different cities. You told me you liked things slightly broken because they had more stories to tell. She blinked rapidly, and for the first time her armor slipped. I wasn't expecting you tonight, she whispered. Neither was I, he said. But here we are. Her gaze held his for a long moment. Then she turned slightly, gesturing toward the painting she'd been standing in front of earlier. That one's mine. He followed her to the canvas. It was chaotic and layered, made of torn pages, brushstrokes, and thread. At the center, a plane ticket had been stitched directly into the canvas, boarding pass crumpled, seat number faded. His chest tightened. You kept it. I keep everything that matters, she said softly. Les reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. I don't know what this is yet, she said, her voice barely above a breath. But I'd like to find out. That's all I want. She turned to him, her eyes clear now. Then don't disappear again. Not unless you ask me to. The invitation came 5 days after the gallery show. A thick envelope, hand-delivered, with no company branding. Just her name, written in clean, sharp script. Inside was a black card with gold lettering, Black Tie Charity Gala Nolan Foundation Presents, a night for new voices. Venue, the Glass Atrium, Midtown. Date, Friday. Time, 8 sharp. And a note on heavy cardstock tucked beneath, where read. Tessa stared at the card for a long time, heart-thudding. She hadn't spoken to him since the gallery. They hadn't made plans, hadn't tried to define anything. But this wasn't a casual text or a coffee invite. This was a stage. A spotlight. She wasn't sure if she belonged there. But Friday came anyway. And so did the knock at her door. She opened it slowly. A man in a dark vest and gloves stood outside, holding a garment bag and a flat black box. For Miss Willis, the man said. She stepped back to let him in and unzipped the bag. The gown was floor-length, backless, and the color of a perfect apple. The shoes inside the box shimmered faintly in the light, heels delicate enough to make her nervous. There was no note, just a message in the gesture itself. By the time the car arrived, her hands were trembling. She sat in the back of a sleek black sedan, knees pressed together, heart tap dancing against her ribs. The driver didn't speak, and she was grateful. Her throat was too dry to answer questions. The glass atrium rose like a cathedral of steel and crystal in the heart of the city. Spotlights lit up the night sky, and photographers clustered near the entrance, their flashes relentless. Tessa stepped out slowly, and the moment her heels touched the pavement, the cameras turned. She wasn't a celebrity. She wasn't famous. But she was wearing red, and every lens followed her inside. The lobby glittered with chandeliers and champagne. Waiters in white gloves moved through the crowd, refilling glasses before they emptied. Guests in designer gowns and tuxedos murmured over art displays, sculptures, and digital installations. And at the center of it all stood Lazarus Nolan. He turned as if he'd felt her arrival before seeing it. His expression shifted instantly, something unreadable like relief threaded with awe. You showed up, he said quietly, taking her in from head to toe. You asked, she replied, voice steadier than she felt. And I don't ignore black tie demands that come with custom gowns. He smiled, but it didn't reach for charm. It was quiet. Real. I wanted you here tonight, he said. But not for the press. Not for the donors. Then why? Because this is the first thing I've built that actually means something to me. And I couldn't walk into it without the person who started all of it. I'm not sure I started anything, she said, her fingers brushing the stem of the champagne glass he handed her. You didn't just give up a seat, he said. You made me stop moving long enough to see what I was missing. Before she could respond, a woman approached, elegant, polished, and clearly annoyed. Laz, we need to talk about the keynote lineup. Peter from the board is complaining again. I'll be there in a moment, he said without looking away from Tessa. The woman's gaze flicked over her, assessing and dismissing in the same glance. You're Tessa, she said. Art contributor. The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. Of course. She turned and disappeared into the crowd. Tessa raised an eyebrow. Friend of yours. Board liaison. She's never liked when I do things she can't predict. Like inviting a no-name artist to a black tie gala? Like falling for one. Tessa's heart stuttered. Is that what this is? I don't throw parties for people I'm indifferent to, he said. And I don't ask women to wear red unless I want them to be the only thing I see in a room like this. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she let her gaze move across the floor at the guests, the music, the curated perfection of it all. I don't belong here, she said finally. You belong anywhere you decide to stand, he said. But if you want to leave, I'll go with you. Right now. No cameras. No headlines. Just us. She looked up at him, searching. I don't want to run, she said. But I don't want to be a prop either. Then you won't be, he said. Come with me. He led her through the side corridor, away from the crowd, past a velvet curtain and up a narrow set of stairs. They emerged onto the rooftop, silent and cool under the night sky. The city stretched below them, glittering and endless. A small table waited in the corner, set for two. Candles flickered in glass holders. A string quartet played softly just beyond the terrace doors. She turned to him. You planned this. I had a feeling you'd need air, he said. And I didn't want to share you with 500 people. She stepped forward, letting the wind lift her hair. You're not what I expected, she said. Neither are you, he said. And that's the only reason we're here. She watched him for a moment, the way his hands stayed in his pockets like he was holding something back. The way his jaw tightened when she didn't speak right away. I don't know what happens next, she said. I don't need to know, he replied. I just need to know you're not walking away again. She reached up and unpinned her hair, letting it fall across her shoulders. Then maybe stop inviting me to things that make me feel like I've stepped into a fairy tale. His voice was low. Why? Because I'm afraid I'll start believing it's real. He stepped closer, his voice barely above the breeze. It is. She didn't move as he reached for her hand. And when his fingers brushed hers, she didn't pull away. Tessa sat in the passenger seat of the town car, her heels kicked off and tucked beside her. The gala was over. The rooftop dinner, the soft music, the candlelight, all of it felt like it belonged to a dream she hadn't wanted to wake from. But now, in the hush of the ride back to her apartment, she was wide awake, and he was still beside her. Laz hadn't said much since they left the rooftop. A good silence, though, one that held weight instead of absence. His hand was resting between them on the leather seat, not reaching, not retreating, just there. Did you always know you'd end up like this? She asked suddenly, her voice soft but clear. He turned his head to her. Like what? Running foundations. Hosting galas. Wearing tuxedos that cost more than most people's rent. A trace of amusement lit his features, but he didn't laugh. I didn't think that far ahead. I just wanted to prove I could build something no one could take away from me. Did someone try? He paused. My father walked away when I was 15. Left my mother with nothing but a mortgage and a pile of bills. I swore I'd never be powerless like that. Never let anyone leave me stranded. Tessa looked at him. So you build an empire to keep people from leaving? I built it to make sure I could always leave first, he said. Turns out neither option feels great. She nodded, absorbing that. That's a lonely kind of logic. I know. The driver turned down her street. Tessa sat up straighter, suddenly unsure. Not of him, but of what happened now. The fairy tale glow was fading, and the chipped paint on her building's stoop felt like a different world entirely. I should come with me this weekend, Laz said, cutting into her thought. She blinked. Where? Upstate. There's a property I bought years ago, but I haven't been back in a long time. It's quiet. No events. No staff. Just space. Her brow furrowed. Why now? Because I don't want to play this out in ballrooms and boardrooms, he said. I want to see who we are when the world isn't watching. She hesitated. I have a presentation due Monday. The gallery is pushing for another piece. I'll have you back Sunday night. No distractions. Just us. And pancakes if you're into that. She stared at him. That's not fair. You know I'm into pancakes. He reached for her hand gently. Then say yes. The car slowed to a stop. Her building loomed quietly, its windows dark except for the one above the stoop hearse. She looked down at his hand, then back at his eyes. Okay, she said. But I'm bringing my own coffee. I don't trust billionaires with caffeine. Les grinned, and this time it reached every inch of him. Friday turned to Saturday with a sky that threatened rain but never followed through. The drive to the estate took hours, winding through roads that narrowed with tree lines and dipped into valleys thick with green. The car finally stopped at the edge of a gravel path where an old stone house stood surrounded by wildflowers and low stone walls. It's not what I pictured, Tessa said as she stepped out, her boots crunching against gravel. It was my mother's, Les said. She left it to me. I haven't been back since the first year after she passed. She glanced at him, her voice gentler now. You sure you want to be here? I do now. Inside, the house smelled of cedar and something older, like time pressed into wood. The fireplace still held ashes from another season. The furniture was mismatched worn leather, wool cushions, a hand-carved dining table that curved slightly to one side. It's beautiful, she said, running her fingers along the back of a chair. It's real, he said. That's why I brought you. They spent the afternoon walking the grounds. No cameras, no staff, just wind and grass and the sound of her laugh when he tripped over a root trying to impress her by skipping stones. By evening, they sat on the front steps with mugs of tea and blankets over their knees. A soft hum of crickets filled the dusk. I keep waiting for the catch, Tessa said quietly. There isn't one. There's always a catch with men like you. I'm not just a man like me anymore, Les said. Not after you. She turned to him, something uncertain flickering in her eyes. What is this to you, really? He didn't hesitate. It's the first time I've wanted something that wasn't about control or strategy or legacy. It's just you, as you are. Tessa stared at him, and for a moment her walls trembled. I was never planning on falling in love with someone like you, she said. You're all the things I don't trust. You don't have to trust the version of me you imagined, he said, voice low. Just the one who's sitting here, drinking tea. On a step he mopped himself because the staff's not here. She laughed softly. You mopped? Badly. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I haven't told anyone this, but the night I gave up my seat, I wasn't going anywhere important. I just wanted to disappear for a while. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have a return ticket. He looked down at her, quiet. I was stuck, she went on. In my career. In my head. In that moment, you weren't some billionaire with a tech empire. You were just someone who looked more lost than me. And now, he asked, now you look like someone who might be worth finding my way back to. Silence settled between them, soft and full. I want you to move in with me, he said. She shifted, surprised. That's fast. It's honest. I don't have your world. I don't have your money. I don't have your last name. You have the only thing I've ever wanted, he said. You have my heart. Her breath caught. You're serious. I've never been more. She stood slowly, wrapping the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Then say it again. He rose to meet her, took her face in his hands, and said it without blinking. You own my heart, Tessa Willis. And I don't want it back. She kissed him then, not because it was a fairy tale, but because it wasn't. Because it was flawed and messy and unexpected. And real. And because somewhere between a missed flight and a red dress, she'd given him hers, too. The rain fell in a steady hush outside the tall windows of Lazarus Nolan's penthouse, streaking the glass like paint on canvas. Tessa stood barefoot on the stone balcony, wrapped in one of his button-down shirts, the hem brushing her thighs. Her fingers curled around a cup of chamomile tea, steam rising into the cool morning air. Below, the city pulsed with life, unaware that her entire world had shifted. Behind her, the soft creak of the sliding door broke the silence. "You're going to freeze," Laz said, stepping out with the blanket in hand. "I like the cold," she replied, not turning. He draped the blanket over her shoulders anyway, then stood beside her, his palm resting lightly at the small of her back. "You didn't sleep much," he said. "I had too much in my head." He didn't press. Instead, he waited. "I've been thinking about what you said." Her voice was steady, but her grip on the cup tightened. "About moving in." "And? I've never shared a life with someone," she said. "Not really. I've shared art. Space. Moments. But never the everyday things. And with you. It's not just a toothbrush in a drawer. It's a future." Laz nodded slowly. "I know it's a lot. I'm not afraid of the idea," she said. "I'm afraid of losing myself inside it." He turned toward her. "I don't want you to disappear into me, Tess. I want to build something where you shine brighter." She looked up at him, eyes searching. "Then I want it too. But on one condition." "Name it." "I keep my studio. I keep my space. And we don't pretend we're perfect." A smile touched his mouth. "Deal." Then softer, "I never wanted perfect. I just wanted you." They stayed there until the rain faded into morning mist. When they finally stepped inside, the world felt different. Calmer. Certain. 2 weeks later, Tessa stood in the center of an empty sunlit room in Laz's penthouse. The hardwood floors gleamed. The walls had been painted a soft, earthy gray. Her easel stood near the window, and her paints were already lined up in the open shelves he'd had custom built. "I asked the contractors to leave the brick behind the canvas wall," Laz said from the doorway. "You always said you loved texture." She turned to him slowly. "You did all this?" "I wanted your space to feel like yours," he said. "Not like you were borrowing mine." She stepped toward him, heartful. "You keep doing that." "What?" "Making me fall in love with you all over again." He closed the distance. "Then I'll never stop." They kissed there, in the middle of the room that felt like promise. That night, they hosted their first dinner together. Just 6 people, 2 of her artist friends, his longtime assistant and her husband, and one of the teen scholarship recipients from the Nolan Foundation. The table was mismatched, the food catered, and the laughter loud enough to echo down the hall. At one point, Tessa caught Laz watching her from across the room, his expression soft and completely unguarded. "What is it?" she asked as she joined him in the kitchen. "I never thought I'd find someone who could make a place feel like home," he said. "But you did. Just by being in it." She leaned against the counter, smiling. "You're getting better at this whole emotional vulnerability thing. Don't get used to it." "Oh, I plan to." In the weeks that followed, their lives began to weave together in ways neither of them had anticipated. They bought groceries together, argued over paint colors for the guest room, and took turns burning breakfast on lazy Sundays. Tessa's art grew bolder. She began mentoring young artists through the foundation, and her next gallery show was already in the works this time, curated entirely on her own terms. Laz, for his part, found himself stepping back from the constant grind. He still ran Nolan Innovations, but with more intention, more balance. He stopped accepting every interview, every panel. He started saying no, because now he had someone to say yes to. One Sunday afternoon, as sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor, Tessa walked in with a small envelope in her hand. He looked up from the stove. "What's that?" She handed it to him without a word. Inside was a photograph, an ultrasound, grainy and black and white, but unmistakable. His eyes lifted to hers, stunned. "Is this?" She nodded, biting her lip. 7 weeks. He exhaled, slow and deep, before pulling her into his arms. "I didn't plan on this," she whispered into his chest. "Neither did I," he said. But I can't imagine anything better. They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other, the air thick with something both terrifying and beautiful. The months passed. The baby room filled with soft colors and laughter. Tessa's belly grew, and so did the quiet joy between them. They moved through the changes together, doctor's appointments, late-night cravings, gentle arguments about names. One evening in early spring, Laz took her to the same rooftop where he'd first asked her to wear red. But this time, the candles weren't for an event. The table was smaller. The moment was just theirs. He got down on one knee, a simple velvet box in hand. No crowds. No photographers. Just them. I don't want a life that makes sense without you in it, he said. Will you marry me? Tessa's eyes filled and her answer came without hesitation. Yes. Absolutely yes. They married in the garden of his mother's old estate, surrounded by wildflowers and only the people who mattered. Her dress was soft and flowing, her bouquet wrapped in a ribbon made from one of her first gallery invitations. Laz wore a navy suit and couldn't take his eyes off her for a second. There was no orchestra, no headlines, just vows and tears, and hands held tightly. Their daughter arrived on a quiet autumn morning, with dark curls and Tessa's eyes. They named her Margot, after Tessa's grandmother. She became the center of their world, but never its limit. Tessa returned to her studio, balancing motherhood and creativity with a fierceness that inspired the young artists she mentored. Laz adjusted his entire schedule around bedtime stories and baby giggles, never missing a moment he could choose to be present for. Their life wasn't flawless, but it was full. Full of small, perfect mornings, of paint-stained kisses and late-night talks, of growth and forgiveness and love that deepened with every shared sunrise. And every time someone asked how they met, Tessa would smile, glance at Laz, and say he was running. I gave him a seat. And somehow we both found where we were meant to land. Together. Always.